He froze in the doorway. His maid had his baby strapped to her back in a strange wrap. "What are you doing with my daughter?" the billionaire demanded, face flushing with rage. The child who hadn't made a sound in weeks was babbling happily. What he didn't know, the woman in the white uniform wasn't just a maid, and firing her would be his greatest mistake. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started. "What is that thing on your back?" Michael Harrison's voice cut through the kitchen like ice. "And why is my daughter in it?" Jasmine Walker froze, wooden spoon in hand. She hadn't heard the front door open over the sound of the music playing softly from her phone. Sophie, the 6-month-old baby secured against her back in a colorful fabric carrier, continued to babble happily, unaware of her father's anger. "Mr. Harrison, I didn't expect you home until 7, Jasmine said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is just a baby carrier. It's perfectly safe, and take my daughter out of that contraption right now," Michael demanded, dropping his briefcase on the marble countertop. His tall frame seemed to fill the entire doorway as rainwater dripped from his expensive coat onto the polished floor. The aroma of simmering soup filled the kitchen. Michael hadn't planned to be home at 4:30 in the afternoon, but the Anderson deal had fallen apart at the last minute. $12 million gone because investors got cold feet. And now this, his maid using his daughter as some kind of accessory while cooking. Jasmine carefully untied the fabric and brought Sophie around to her front. The baby immediately reached for the wooden spoon, her small fingers grabbing at it. "She likes to watch me cook," Jasmine explained as she gently handed Sophie to her father. "The carrier keeps her secure and the movement helps with her—" "I don't pay you to experiment with my daughter," Michael interrupted, awkwardly taking Sophie. The baby's face immediately crumpled, and she began to cry. "I pay you to clean this house and follow proper childcare protocols." "I understand, sir, but Sophie has been having trouble sleeping, and I noticed she responds well to being carried this way. It actually helps with her sensory development and—" "Sensory development?" Michael scoffed. "Where did you get your childcare expertise? From some primitive village practice?" Dorothy Coleman, the 60-year-old head housekeeper, appeared in the doorway behind Michael. Her weathered face showed immediate concern as she took in the scene. "Is everything all right, Mr. Harrison?" she asked, her eyes moving between Michael and Jasmine. "No, everything is not all right. I come home to find my daughter strapped to the maid's back like some kind of backpack." Michael bounced Sophie awkwardly as her cries grew louder. Mrs. Coleman stepped forward. "If I may, sir, Sophie has been much happier since Miss Walker started caring for her. She's been eating better and crying less at night." Michael turned to the older woman with narrowed eyes. "You knew about this?" Mrs. Coleman hesitated. "I've observed that Sophie responds very well to Miss Walker's care." Jasmine stood tall despite the tension in the room. "Mr. Harrison, I actually have training in—" "I don't care what kind of training you think you have," Michael snapped. "This is completely unprofessional and dangerous. What if you had spilled something hot? What if she had fallen?" "The carrier is designed to prevent that," Jasmine explained calmly. "It's used by millions of parents worldwide and is recommended by pediatricians for—" "You're fired," Michael said flatly. The kitchen fell silent except for Sophie's continued crying. "Excuse me?" Jasmine finally said. "You heard me. You're fired. I want you out of my house in 20 minutes. Michael struggled to hold his squirming daughter. "Mrs. Coleman will provide your final paycheck." Mrs. Coleman stepped forward. "Mr. Harrison, perhaps you should reconsider. Sophie has been doing so well lately and—" "That's enough, Mrs. Coleman." Michael's tone left no room for argument. "Please see that Miss Walker collects her things and leaves promptly." Jasmine stood motionless for several seconds, her brown eyes fixed on Sophie, who was reaching toward her with small, grasping hands. Something like grief flashed across Jasmine's face before she carefully removed her apron. "Very well, Mr. Harrison." Her voice was professional despite the circumstances. "May I at least finish preparing Sophie's dinner? She hasn't eaten yet, and she's been quite particular about her food lately." Michael frowned. "Mrs. Coleman can handle it." Jasmine nodded once, then turned to Mrs. Coleman. "The soup needs to simmer for another 15 minutes. Sophie likes it slightly cooled with the carrots mashed." She hesitated. "And she won't take her bottle unless it's warmed exactly 30 seconds and tested on the inside of your wrist first." Mrs. Coleman nodded, her eyes sad. "I'll remember, dear." 20 minutes later, Jasmine stood at the front door with a small bag containing her belongings. The rain continued to pour outside, turning the expensive landscaping of the Bel Air mansion into a glistening, wet painting. From somewhere deep in the house, Sophie's cries echoed down the hallway. Mrs. Coleman pressed an envelope into Jasmine's hand. "Your check, dear, and I added my phone number at the bottom, just in case." "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman," Jasmine said quietly. She glanced back toward the sound of Sophie's cries. "Make sure to hold the bottle at a 45-degree angle. It helps with her digestion." "I will." Mrs. Coleman squeezed Jasmine's hand. "What will you do now?" Jasmine's shoulders straightened. "What I've always done. Take care of my sister." As she opened her umbrella and stepped into the rain, Jasmine pulled out her phone and looked at the screen. 3 missed calls from Los Angeles General Hospital and a text message. "Brianna's test results are in. Doctor wants to discuss treatment options. Please call ASAP." Jasmine took a deep breath and looked back at the Harrison mansion one last time. Inside that house was a 6-month-old baby who had just started to thrive under her care, and waiting at home was her 19-year-old sister, fighting cancer with treatments they could barely afford. The job at the Harrison household had paid 3 times what she would make as a pediatric nurse at Los Angeles General. 3 months of that salary had covered 6 weeks of Brianna's treatments. Now that lifeline was gone. Back in the kitchen, Michael tried unsuccessfully to calm his screaming daughter. He jiggled her awkwardly while Mrs. Coleman prepared a bottle according to Jasmine's instructions. "She liked that woman too much," Michael muttered. "Children know who truly cares for them," Mrs. Coleman said quietly, testing the temperature of the formula on her wrist. "Miss Walker has a special touch with Sophie." "She was using dangerous, outdated methods," Michael insisted. "What kind of professional straps a baby to their back?" Mrs. Coleman handed him the bottle. "A professional who understands that babies need close contact to feel secure. Sophie has been happier these last 3 months than since—" She trailed off. "Since Diana died," Michael finished flatly. The mention of his late wife's name hung heavy in the air. 6 months had passed since complications during childbirth had taken Diana's life, leaving Michael with a newborn daughter and a grief he couldn't process. "Yes," Mrs. Coleman said gently. Since then, Sophie refused the bottle, turning her head away and continuing to cry. Michael's frustration mounted. "Why won't she eat?" he demanded. "She might be missing Miss Walker," Mrs. Coleman suggested carefully. "Children form attachments quickly." Michael shook his head. "That's ridiculous. She's my daughter. She doesn't even know that woman." But as Sophie's cries escalated into desperate wails that echoed through the empty mansion, Michael couldn't help but wonder if he had just made a terrible mistake. Sophie's cries continued through the night, her wails bouncing off the walls of the Harrison mansion. Michael paced the hallway outside the nursery at 3 o'clock in the morning, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "Please, Sophie, please stop crying," he begged, bouncing her gently as Mrs. Coleman had shown him. The baby only cried louder, her small face bright red with effort. Michael carried her to the kitchen where Mrs. Coleman was preparing another bottle. "This is the 4th bottle tonight," Michael said. "She's still not eating." Mrs. Coleman tested the formula on her wrist. She took a few sips from the last one. "Let's try again." Michael positioned the bottle near Sophie's mouth, but she turned her head away, her cries growing more intense. "I don't understand what's wrong with her," Michael said, frustration clear in his voice. "She wasn't like this yesterday." Mrs. Coleman chose her words carefully. "Babies are sensitive to changes, Mr. Harrison." Miss Walker had been caring for Sophie most days for the past 3 months. "This isn't about the maid," Michael snapped. "There must be something else wrong with her." By morning, both Michael and Mrs. Coleman were exhausted. Sophie had slept only in short bursts between crying fits. "I'm calling Dr. Anderson," Michael said, phone in hand. "Sophie needs to be examined." Dr. Robert Anderson arrived at the mansion by 10 o'clock that morning. A tall man with silver-rimmed glasses and a kind face, he had been the Harrison family doctor for years and had delivered Sophie 6 months earlier. "When did these symptoms start?" Dr. Anderson asked as he examined the fussy baby. "Yesterday evening," Michael replied. "She won't eat, won't sleep, and cries constantly." Dr. Anderson nodded. "And what changed yesterday?" Michael hesitated. "I fired the maid who was helping with Sophie." "I see." Dr. Anderson continued his examination. "Sophie appears to have developed a rash as well, here on her neck and chest." Michael leaned closer. "A rash? Is it serious?" "Hard to say without tests. It could be a reaction to stress, a new detergent, or something in her environment." Dr. Anderson looked at Michael. "Babies this age are very sensitive to changes in routine and caregivers." "Are you saying this is my fault?" Michael asked defensively. Dr. Anderson packed his stethoscope into his bag. "I'm saying that consistency is important for infants. I'll prescribe a cream for the rash, but I recommend minimizing changes to her routine for now." After the doctor left, Michael called his assistant at Harrison Pharmaceuticals. "Clara, I need you to find the best nanny in Los Angeles. Money is no object. I need someone here today." By afternoon, the first candidate arrived. Miranda Peterson had impeccable references and 15 years of experience with high-profile families. "Sophie needs structure and discipline," Miranda explained as she took the baby from Mrs. Coleman. "She'll adapt to my methods quickly." But within an hour, Sophie was crying harder than before. By evening, Miranda called it quits. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison, but I've never encountered such a difficult infant. Perhaps she needs medical attention?" The next day, 2 more nannies came and went. Sophie's rash was spreading despite the cream, and she had barely eaten in 24 hours. Meanwhile, across the city in Echo Park, Jasmine Walker entered her small apartment, placing her keys in a dish by the door. "Bree? I'm home," she called out. Brianna Walker sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her thin frame looking smaller than her 19 years. The effects of chemotherapy were visible in her pale complexion and the colorful scarf covering her head. "How was your job interview?" Brianna asked, muting the television. Jasmine set her purse down. "Los Angeles General offered me a position in the pediatric ward." "That's great!" Brianna's face lit up. "That's what you wanted, right?" Jasmine sat beside her sister. "The pay is only a third of what I was making at the Harrison house. After rent and your treatments, we'd have almost nothing left." Brianna's smile faded. "Did you tell them about your experience? Your specialized training?" "It doesn't matter. That's the standard rate for new nurses." Jasmine opened her laptop. "I'm going to apply for more positions tonight." The screen showed their bank account balance when she logged in. The numbers were worryingly low. "The hospital called while you were out," Brianna said quietly. "They want to discuss my treatment plan. I think they're concerned about the payments." Jasmine closed her eyes briefly. "I'll call them tomorrow. We still have enough for 1 more month of treatments." "And after that?" Brianna asked. Jasmine didn't answer. They both knew the alternative was County Hospital, where the cancer treatment program had half the success rate of their current facility. Back at the Harrison mansion, 3 days had passed since Jasmine's dismissal. Michael sat in his home office, surrounded by baby books and medical websites open on his laptop. Sophie's cries echoed from the nursery down the hall. The pediatric specialist he had hired at $400 per hour had just left, with no more answers than Dr. Anderson had provided. "Her tests are all normal, Mr. Harrison," the specialist had said. "Sometimes babies go through fussy periods. The rash is concerning but not dangerous. Keep applying the cream and try to stick to a consistent routine." Michael rubbed his temples. Harrison Pharmaceuticals was suffering from his absence. The Anderson deal was officially dead, and 2 other major clients were threatening to pull out. Mrs. Coleman knocked gently on his office door. "Sir, I've prepared dinner." And Sophie finally took an ounce from her bottle. "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. I don't know what I'd do without you right now." The older woman hesitated. "Mr. Harrison, if I may, I've been trying to use some of Miss Walker's techniques with Sophie, but I'm not having much success." "What techniques?" Michael asked. "The way she held her, certain songs she sang." Sophie responded well to them. Michael leaned back in his chair. "Did you know the maid had medical training?" "Miss Walker? No, sir, I didn't. But I'm not surprised. She knew exactly what Sophie needed." That night, after another failed attempt to get Sophie to sleep, Michael found himself sitting on the nursery floor at 2 o'clock in the morning. The baby had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep in her crib, her breathing raspy from hours of crying. Michael looked at the photo of Diana on the nursery wall. His wife's smile seemed to mock him now. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "She needs you, not me." For the first time since Diana's death, tears slipped down Michael's cheeks. He didn't hear Mrs. Coleman enter the room until she placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's all right to cry, Mr. Harrison," she said softly. "I've failed them both," Michael said. "Diana and Sophie." Mrs. Coleman sat beside him on the floor, her knees creaking. "You haven't failed. You're trying." "Not hard enough. I didn't even know the maid had medical training. I never asked. I just assumed." "Perhaps it's not too late to fix that mistake," Mrs. Coleman suggested carefully. Michael wiped his eyes. "She wouldn't come back after how I treated her." Mrs. Coleman was quiet for a moment. "There's something you should know, Mr. Harrison. Before Mrs. Harrison passed away, she shared concerns with me about Sophie. She thought the baby might have special needs that would require specialized care." Michael looked up sharply. "What? Diana never mentioned that to me. She didn't want to worry you during the pregnancy, but she made me promise to tell you if I ever noticed Sophie struggling." Mrs. Coleman stood slowly. "I believe Miss Walker recognized something in Sophie that the rest of us missed." The next morning, Dr. Anderson returned to check on Sophie's rash, which had now spread to her back. "I'm concerned about her lack of appetite," Dr. Anderson said. "If this continues, we may need to hospitalize her for fluids." "Doctor," Michael said, "my wife apparently had concerns about Sophie having special needs. Is there something wrong with my daughter that we're missing?" Dr. Anderson considered this. "I'd need to run more tests, but there are several possibilities. Some infants have sensory processing issues that make them more sensitive to changes in routine or environment." He paused. "You mentioned a maid who was good with Sophie. What exactly did she do differently?" "I don't know. She carried her in some kind of wrap. Mrs. Coleman said she sang to her, used specific techniques." "Interesting." Dr. Anderson made notes in Sophie's file. "Mr. Harrison, would it be possible to speak with this person? Her observations might be valuable." Michael shook his head. "I fired her. I don't think she'd want to help me now." After the doctor left, Michael examined Sophie's medical file. Flipping through the pages, he noticed something strange. During the exact 3 months Jasmine had worked in his home, Sophie's growth charts showed steady improvement. Before and after, including now, the charts showed concerning dips. "Mrs. Coleman," Michael called, "bring me the personnel file for Jasmine Walker." When Mrs. Coleman returned with the file, Michael opened it and began to read. His eyes widened as he scanned Jasmine's credentials. She has a nursing degree specializing in pediatric developmental disorders, he said in disbelief. Why would someone with these qualifications work as a maid? Mrs. Coleman handed him an envelope from the file. Perhaps this explains it. Inside was a letter Jasmine had included with her application, explaining her sister's cancer diagnosis and her need for a higher-paying position to cover treatment costs. Michael stared at the letter. I never read this. I never even looked at her file. Mrs. Coleman nodded. Perhaps now would be a good time to start looking more closely at what's right in front of you. In the quiet of the nursery, Sophie began to cry again, her small voice growing more desperate by the second. Mrs. Coleman waited until Michael fell asleep at his desk before slipping into the laundry room with her personal phone. She dialed the number she had saved under JW and waited nervously as it rang. Hello? Jasmine's voice sounded tired. Miss Walker, it's Dorothy Coleman from the Harrison household. There was a pause. Mrs. Coleman? Is everything okay? The older woman glanced toward the hallway to make sure she was alone. No, dear, everything is not okay. It's about Sophie. She's been terrible since you left. Won't eat, won't sleep. She has a rash that keeps spreading. I'm sorry to hear that, Jasmine said carefully, but I'm not sure what you expect me to do. Mr. Harrison made it very clear he doesn't want me around his daughter. I know, but Mrs. Coleman lowered her voice. Could we meet somewhere? Just to talk? I think there's something wrong with Sophie that the doctors aren't seeing. After a moment of hesitation, Jasmine agreed. There's a coffee shop called Riverside Cafe halfway between Echo Park and Bel Air. I can meet you there tomorrow at 10 in the morning. The next day, Mrs. Coleman told Michael she needed to run errands for the household. He barely looked up from Sophie's medical file, now spread across his desk. At the Riverside Cafe, Jasmine was already waiting at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She wore simple jeans and a blue blouse instead of the uniform Mrs. Coleman was used to seeing her in. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Coleman said as she sat down. I was surprised to hear from you, Jasmine admitted. How bad is Sophie's condition? Mrs. Coleman sighed. Dr. Anderson is worried about dehydration if she doesn't start eating properly soon. The rash is spreading despite the medication. Jasmine frowned. Has she been tested for allergies? Yes, everything's come back normal. Mrs. Coleman leaned forward. There's something I never told Mr. Harrison until yesterday. Before Mrs. Harrison died, she shared concerns with me about Sophie possibly having developmental issues. Jasmine's eyes widened. She suspected something too? You noticed it as well? Jasmine nodded. From the first week I was there. Sophie shows signs of sensory processing sensitivity. She gets overwhelmed easily by certain sounds and textures, but responds positively to deep pressure and consistent motion. Is that why you used that baby carrier? Yes. The fabric wrap provides gentle, constant pressure that helps calm her nervous system. The same with the songs I sang. They were at a specific rhythm that matched her natural calming response. Jasmine pulled out her phone. I was actually keeping notes on what worked for her. Mrs. Coleman looked impressed. Mr. Harrison finally read your personnel file. He had no idea you were a trained pediatric nurse. Most people don't look beyond what they expect to see, Jasmine said quietly. He's desperate now, Mrs. Coleman added. He's hired 3 different nannies, and none lasted more than a day. Jasmine sighed. I feel terrible for Sophie, but I can't go back there. My sister depends on me, and I can't risk being fired again with no notice. I understand, dear. But would you mind if I shared your observations with Dr. Anderson? He suggested sensory processing issues might be the problem. Of course. Anything to help Sophie. Jasmine spent the next 30 minutes explaining the techniques she had used with Sophie, the specific way she held her, the sounds and smells that seemed to calm her, and the textures that triggered distress. Meanwhile, at the Harrison mansion, Dr. Anderson was examining Sophie again. The rash is spreading despite the medication, he noted. gently touching the red patches on Sophie's skin. "And she's lost weight since my last visit." Michael ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I've tried everything. Nothing works." Dr. Anderson considered his next words carefully. "Mr. Harrison, I'd like to test Sophie for sensory processing disorder. It's a condition where the brain has trouble receiving and responding to information that comes in through the senses." "What would that mean for her?" "If that's what we're dealing with, she would need specialized care from someone trained in sensory integration techniques." Dr. Anderson made notes in Sophie's file. "You mentioned a baby carrier that your former employee used?" Michael nodded. "Some fabric thing she had Sophie strapped to her back in. I thought it was dangerous. Actually, for children with sensory issues, that kind of deep pressure can be very therapeutic." Dr. Anderson looked up from his notes. "This maid, did she do other things that seemed to help Sophie?" "According to Mrs. Coleman, yes. She sang specific songs, used certain cooking smells. Sophie apparently responded well to all of it." Dr. Anderson's interest was clearly piqued. "Mr. Harrison, would it be possible for me to speak with this person? Her observations could be valuable in diagnosing Sophie." Michael shook his head. "I already told you I fired her. I doubt she'd be willing to help now." "I understand. Well, I'd like to run some tests. In the meantime, try to maintain as much consistency as possible in Sophie's environment." After Dr. Anderson left, Michael returned to his office, staring at Jasmine's personnel file. Her qualifications were impressive: a nursing degree with specialization in pediatric developmental disorders, additional certifications in sensory integration therapy, and excellent references from her clinical rotations. How had he missed all this? When Mrs. Coleman returned from her errands, she seemed slightly more hopeful than when she'd left. "Dr. Anderson was here," Michael told her. "He wants to test Sophie for something called sensory processing disorder." Mrs. Coleman nodded. "That makes sense. You don't seem surprised." Mrs. Harrison had mentioned similar concerns before. She hesitated, then continued. "And Miss Walker noticed the same signs." Michael looked up sharply. "How do you know what Walker noticed?" Mrs. Coleman straightened her shoulders. "I met with her this morning, sir, to discuss Sophie's condition." "You what?" "Someone needed to do something, Mr. Harrison. Sophie is suffering." Instead of the anger Mrs. Coleman expected, Michael simply asked, "What did she say?" She confirmed what Dr. Anderson suspects. Sophie shows classic signs of sensory processing sensitivity. Miss Walker had been using specific techniques to help: the baby carrier, certain songs, even the cooking aromas. They weren't random. They were deliberate interventions based on her training. Michael sat heavily in his chair. "Why didn't she tell me?" "She tried to explain about the carrier, sir. You didn't give her the chance." After Mrs. Coleman left, Michael called Dr. Anderson's office and left a message requesting more information about sensory processing disorder. That evening, as Dr. Anderson was leaving Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Mrs. Coleman was waiting by his car. "Mrs. Coleman, is something wrong with Sophie?" "No change, doctor, but I wanted to give you this." She handed him a piece of paper. "It's Jasmine Walker's contact information. She was the maid who cared for Sophie, but she's actually a trained pediatric nurse specializing in developmental disorders." Dr. Anderson looked surprised. Why was she working as a maid? Her sister has cancer. The maid position paid better than entry-level nursing jobs. She needed the money for treatments. Dr. Anderson pocketed the paper. "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. This could be very helpful." Back in Echo Park, Jasmine sat at her small kitchen table creating a detailed care plan for Sophie. Even though she would likely never see the child again, she couldn't stop thinking about her. The notebook contained specific instructions for holding techniques, sensory activities, and feeding methods that had worked during her time at the Harrison house. Brianna walked slowly into the kitchen, her body thin from treatments. "What are you working on? Job applications?" "No," Jasmine said. "Just some notes about that baby I was caring for." The one with the rich dad who fired you? Brianna sat down carefully. Why bother? Because she needs help, and her father doesn't understand what's wrong. Jasmine closed the notebook. How are you feeling? Did you take your medication? Yes, Nurse Jasmine, Brianna said with a small smile. The hospital called again about the bill. Jasmine's face tightened. I'll call them tomorrow. We can't keep avoiding them. Maybe it's time to consider county hospital. No, Jasmine said firmly. Their success rates are half of what your current doctors achieve. We'll figure something out. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Jasmine picked it up and read, "This is Dr. Robert Anderson from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I'd like to discuss Sophie Harrison's case with you. Would you be available to meet tomorrow? Your insights could be valuable for her diagnosis and treatment." Jasmine stared at the message, her finger hovering over the reply button. Could helping Sophie somehow provide a solution to her own desperate situation with Brianna's treatments? Or would getting involved with the Harrison family again only lead to more heartbreak? Brianna noticed her expression. What is it? Nothing, Jasmine said, setting down the phone. Just something I need to think about. After a restless night, Jasmine replied to Dr. Anderson's message early the next morning. She agreed to meet him at a downtown coffee shop called Capital Brew, located halfway between Cedars-Sinai and her apartment. The coffee shop was busy with morning customers when Jasmine arrived. Dr. Anderson was already seated at a corner table, medical files spread before him. He stood when he saw her. "Miss Walker, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "I appreciate your willingness to discuss Sophie's case." Jasmine shook his hand. "I care about Sophie. If I can help, I want to." They sat down and Dr. Anderson ordered coffee for both of them. "Mrs. Coleman tells me you have training in pediatric nursing with a focus on developmental disorders." "Yes, I graduated from UCLA's nursing program 2 years ago," Jasmine confirmed. "I specialized in sensory integration therapy for infants and toddlers." "Then may I ask why you were working as a maid in the Harrison household?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "My younger sister Brianna has leukemia. The treatments are expensive, and the maid position paid 3 times what I could make as a new nurse at Los Angeles General." Dr. Anderson nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Now, tell me about your observations of Sophie." For the next 20 minutes, Jasmine detailed everything she had noticed about Sophie's condition. She described the baby's specific reactions to different textures, sounds, and movements. She explained the techniques she had used: the baby carrier, certain songs, specific ways of holding her. The carrier provides deep pressure stimulation, which helps regulate her nervous system, Jasmine explained. When I cooked with certain spices, especially cinnamon and vanilla, she was calmer. But strong smells like bleach or citrus cleaners made her extremely agitated. Dr. Anderson took detailed notes. "This is remarkable, Miss Walker. Your observations match exactly what I would look for in a sensory processing evaluation. Did Mr. Harrison know about your background?" "No," Jasmine said. "He never asked, and I needed the job too badly to risk complicating things. I included my qualifications and a letter explaining my situation in my application, but I don't think he ever read them." "That's unfortunate," Dr. Anderson said. "Sophie has declined significantly since you left. The rash is likely a stress response to the sudden change in her sensory environment." He closed his notebook and looked at Jasmine thoughtfully. "Miss Walker, I sit on the board of the Children's Medical Foundation. We provide funding for pediatric medical treatments, including cancer therapies for patients who can't afford them." Jasmine's eyes widened. "Are you saying you might be able to help Brianna?" "Possibly," Dr. Anderson said carefully, "but the foundation has strict requirements. We would need documentation of your professional skills and their impact on a patient like Sophie. It would strengthen your case significantly." "So you want me to go back to work for Mr. Harrison? After how he treated me?" Jasmine shook her head. "I can't risk that again. Brianna depends on me." "I understand your hesitation," Dr. Anderson said, "but think about it. Sophie needs your help, and this might be a way to help your sister too." Meanwhile, at Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, Michael was struggling through a board meeting. The presentation slides on the large screen showed declining quarterly projections. As you can see, Richard Townsend, the head of research and development, pointed to a graph. "Nexapril is falling behind schedule and over budget. Our competitors at Meridian Pharmaceuticals are already in final testing phases with their version." Michael stared at the screen, but his mind was on Sophie. He had barely slept in days, and his appearance showed it. Wrinkled shirt, loosened tie, dark circles under his eyes. "Michael?" Richard's voice cut through his thoughts. "Did you hear the question?" "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" Michael asked. Richard looked annoyed. "I asked if you've reviewed the revised marketing strategy for Nexapril given the competition from Meridian." "Not yet," Michael admitted. "I've been dealing with a family situation." The board members exchanged concerned glances. Since Diana's death, Michael had always put work first. This distraction was new and troubling. After the meeting, Michael's assistant Clara approached him. "Mr. Harrison, is everything okay? You seem—" "I'm fine," Michael cut her off. "Just tired." "Has Dr. Anderson called back yet?" "No, sir. But the pediatric specialist you consulted sent over her report on Sophie. It's on your desk." Back in his office, Michael opened the specialist's report. The doctor had noted possible sensory processing disorder and recommended consistent care from someone trained in sensory integration techniques. Michael rubbed his eyes tiredly. Next to the report was Sophie's medical file, which he had been reviewing obsessively for days. He flipped through the growth charts again, noticing the clear improvement during Jasmine's 3 months of employment. He pressed the intercom. "Clara, bring me the personnel file for Jasmine Walker again." When the file arrived, Michael opened it and reread Jasmine's letter explaining her sister's condition. The words hit him differently now. "My sister Brianna is 19 years old and fighting leukemia. I am her only family and support system. While I am a qualified pediatric nurse, the salary for entry-level nursing positions would not cover her treatments. I am applying for this position because the compensation would allow me to provide for her care while still utilizing my skills with children." Michael sat back, feeling shame wash over him. He had never even interviewed Jasmine properly. Mrs. Coleman had handled the hiring, and he had simply approved it without reading anything. He had assumed she was just a maid with no special qualifications, and when he saw her with Sophie in the carrier, he had jumped to conclusions based on what? His own prejudices? That night, after another difficult evening with Sophie, Michael sat in his home office with his laptop open. He had spent hours researching sensory processing disorder, reading medical journals and parent forums. The descriptions matched Sophie's symptoms perfectly. One article described the benefits of deep pressure stimulation, exactly what the baby carrier provided. Another explained how consistent caregivers were crucial for children with sensory issues. Everything pointed to what Jasmine had instinctively been doing for Sophie. Across town in Echo Park, Jasmine sat in Dr. Patel's office at the UCLA Medical Center. The oncologist's expression was serious as she reviewed Brianna's latest test results. "The current treatment isn't producing the response we hoped for," Dr. Patel explained. "The cancer cells are showing resistance to the standard protocol." Brianna, sitting beside Jasmine, gripped her sister's hand tightly. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to consider a more aggressive approach," Dr. Patel said. "There's an experimental treatment showing promising results in cases like yours. It combines targeted immunotherapy with modified chemotherapy." "What are the success rates?" Jasmine asked. "Early trials show 65% remission in cases similar to Brianna's. That's significantly better than the 30% we might expect with continued standard treatment." Jasmine nodded. "And the cost?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "That's the difficult part. Because it's still experimental, insurance won't cover it. The treatment course would cost approximately $300,000. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. Jasmine felt the blood drain from her face. $300,000? She repeated. That's impossible. There are some assistance programs, Dr. Patel said, but they have long waiting lists. I wish I had better news. On the drive home, Brianna was quiet, staring out the window at the passing streets of Los Angeles. We'll figure something out, Jasmine finally said. I promise. How? Brianna asked. That's more money than we could save in years. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it quickly before returning her eyes to the road. It was from Dr. Anderson. Have you considered my offer? Sophie's condition is worsening. Mr. Harrison has been researching sensory processing disorder. I think he's ready to listen now. Jasmine gripped the steering wheel tighter. The memory of Sophie's small face, happy in the carrier on her back, flashed through her mind. Then she looked at Brianna, thin and pale beside her. Her sister needed that experimental treatment. Sophie needed someone who understood her condition. What is it? Brianna asked, noticing her expression. Dr. Anderson wants me to help with Sophie Harrison again, Jasmine explained. The baby? But her father fired you. Yes, but she's not doing well. And Dr. Anderson mentioned a foundation that might help with your treatments if I can demonstrate my professional skills. Brianna studied her sister's face. You really care about that baby, don't you? I do, Jasmine admitted. She's special, Bri. And she needs help that her father doesn't know how to give her. Back at the Harrison mansion, Michael finally made a decision. It was almost midnight, but he picked up his phone and dialed the number from Jasmine's file. As the phone rang, he wondered if she would even answer, and if she did, what could he possibly say to make up for how he had treated her? The phone rang 3 times before going to voicemail. Michael hung up without leaving a message. It was too late to call, but he couldn't wait any longer. Sophie had barely eaten all day, and her rash was now covering most of her small body. Early the next morning, Michael copied the address from Jasmine's personnel file and typed it into his car's navigation system. Echo Park was only 7 miles from Bel Air, but it might as well have been a different country. As Michael drove his silver luxury sedan through the neighborhood, he noticed the small apartment buildings, corner markets with signs in multiple languages, and people waiting at bus stops. He had lived in Los Angeles for 15 years but had never visited this area. He found Jasmine's building, a 2-story tan stucco structure with a small parking lot. Michael parked and checked the apartment number from the file. 203. Walking up the outdoor staircase, Michael felt completely out of place in his expensive suit. He hesitated before knocking on the door marked 203. After a moment, the door opened, and Jasmine stood there in jeans and a simple blue t-shirt. Her eyes widened with surprise. Mr. Harrison? Ms. Walker, Michael said formally. May I come in? I need to speak with you about Sophie. Jasmine hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. The apartment was small but tidy. Medical textbooks were stacked on a coffee table next to neatly organized pill bottles and medical supplies. On the wall hung a framed nursing diploma from UCLA. A young woman sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket. She was thin, with a colorful scarf covering her head. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her resemblance to Jasmine was clear. This is my sister Brianna, Jasmine said. Brianna, this is Mr. Harrison, my former employer. Brianna gave a weak smile. The one who fired you for using a baby carrier? Michael shifted uncomfortably. Yes, that would be me. What do you want, Mr. Harrison? Jasmine asked, crossing her arms. Michael took a deep breath. I came to apologize. I was wrong about you and wrong about the baby carrier. I've since learned about your qualifications and about Sophie's condition. Sensory processing disorder, Jasmine said. Dr. Anderson confirmed it? Yes, and Sophie has gotten worse since you left. She's barely eating, the rash is spreading, and she cries constantly. Michael ran a hand through his hair. I'd like to offer you your job back. with a substantial raise. Jasmine shook her head. I can't. Name your price, Michael said. Whatever you were making before, I'll double it. It's not about money, Jasmine replied. I can't risk being fired again with no notice. Brianna depends on me for stability. I understand, but... A sudden gasp from Brianna interrupted him. Jasmine turned just as her sister's body stiffened and began to shake violently. She's having a seizure, Jasmine said, immediately moving to Brianna's side. Help me lay her down. Michael watched in amazement as Jasmine transformed before his eyes. The woman he had dismissed as just a maid moved with confident, practiced motions. She gently guided Brianna to lie on her side, cushioning her head and checking the time on her watch. Can I help? Michael asked. Get that pillow, Jasmine instructed, pointing to a nearby chair. As she positioned the pillow under Brianna's head, she spoke in a calm, professional tone. This is her third seizure this month. Side effect of the brain inflammation from the treatment. She checked Brianna's breathing and pulse while continuing to monitor the time. After about 90 seconds, the seizure began to subside. We need to get her to the hospital, Jasmine said, already reaching for her phone. This one lasted longer than the others. I'll drive you, Michael offered immediately. It'll be faster than waiting for an ambulance. 10 minutes later, Michael was carefully driving toward Cedars-Sinai Medical Center with Jasmine in the back seat cradling Brianna's head in her lap. Brianna was conscious but confused. Her oncologist is Dr. Patel at Cedars, Jasmine explained, speaking to the emergency room on her phone. Yes, she's had 3 seizures in the past month, but this one lasted 97 seconds. Previous medication was lorazepam at 5 milligrams. Blood pressure is 100/68. Michael listened, impressed by Jasmine's knowledge and composure. The medical terminology flowed naturally from her lips. At the emergency room entrance, Michael helped carry Brianna inside while Jasmine spoke with the intake nurse. Within minutes, Brianna was taken to an examination room, leaving Michael and Jasmine in the crowded waiting area. Michael looked around at the packed room. Crying children, elderly patients in wheelchairs, people filling out forms. He realized he had never waited in an emergency room before. As the CEO of Harrison Pharmaceuticals, he had a private doctor who made house calls. This is what healthcare looks like for most people, Jasmine said quietly, noting his expression. How long will we have to wait? Michael asked. For us, not long. Seizures get priority. For some of these people? She gestured around the room. Hours, maybe. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs. Michael loosened his tie, feeling out of place in his expensive suit among people in work uniforms and casual clothes. Thank you for driving us, Jasmine said after a while. That was, unexpected. It was the least I could do, Michael replied. You handled that situation incredibly well. I'm a nurse. It's what I'm trained for. I know that now, Michael said. I should have known it before. I should have read your file, asked about your background. Instead, I made assumptions. Before Jasmine could respond, a familiar voice called her name. They looked up to see Dr. Anderson walking toward them. Jasmine? I got your message about Brianna. He stopped when he saw Michael. Mr. Harrison? What are you doing here? Michael stood. I was at Miss Walker's apartment when her sister had a seizure. I drove them here. Dr. Anderson looked between them with surprise. I see. Well, I've spoken with Dr. Patel. They're running tests on Brianna now. Is she going to be okay? Jasmine asked. The seizure was likely caused by inflammation from her last treatment, Dr. Anderson explained. They're giving her medication to reduce the swelling and prevent more seizures. Michael frowned. You seem very familiar with Jasmine's sister's case, Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson nodded. Yes, well, after our conversation about Sophie, I took a special interest. I've been consulting with Jasmine about Sophie's condition and looking into options for Brianna through the Children's Medical Foundation. "You've been consulting with Miss Walker about my daughter?" Michael asked, his voice rising slightly. "Mr. Harrison," Dr. Anderson said calmly, "you hired me to find the best care for Sophie. That's what I'm doing. Jasmine has specialized training in exactly the condition Sophie has." Michael turned to Jasmine. "Is this true? You've been discussing Sophie with Dr. Anderson behind my back?" "He asked for my professional opinion," Jasmine replied evenly. "I care about Sophie. I wanted to help." Before Michael could respond, Dr. Patel emerged from the treatment area and approached them. "Miss Walker, your sister is stable now. The anti-seizure medication is working, but this incident confirms what we discussed yesterday. We need to move forward with the more aggressive treatment plan soon." "The experimental treatment?" Jasmine asked. Dr. Patel nodded. "Yes, the standard protocol isn't controlling the disease progression, but as I explained, there are significant financial considerations." "How significant?" Michael asked. Dr. Patel looked at him questioningly. "This is Mr. Harrison, my former employer," Jasmine explained. "The treatment costs $300,000, Dr. Patel said. "Insurance won't cover experimental procedures." Michael's eyebrows rose. "That's the total cost?" "Yes," Dr. Patel confirmed. "And we require a $50,000 deposit before we can begin." Michael immediately reached for his wallet. "I can write a check right now." "No," Jasmine said firmly. "Mr. Harrison, I don't want your charity." "It's not charity," Michael insisted. "It's the right thing to do." Dr. Anderson had been listening quietly. Now he cleared his throat. "There's something you both should know. The experimental treatment. Dr. Patel is recommending uses a compound that directly competes with a drug Harrison Pharmaceuticals is currently developing." Michael froze. "What?" "Nexapril," Dr. Anderson said. "Your company's new cancer drug that's in final development. The treatment Brianna needs uses a competing approach that could potentially make Nexapril obsolete if it proves more effective." Jasmine looked between the two men. "What does that mean?" "It means," Michael said slowly, "that by helping your sister, I might be undermining my own company's flagship drug." The realization hung in the air between them as a nurse appeared at the doorway. "Miss Walker? Your sister is asking for you." Jasmine stood, giving Michael one last look before following the nurse. Michael watched her go, suddenly understanding that the decision he now faced was about much more than just one sick young woman or one baby with sensory issues. It was about the kind of man he wanted to be. Michael sat in the hospital waiting room, his mind racing. Dr. Anderson had left to check on another patient, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. The situation was clear but impossible. Help Brianna with a treatment that could harm his company, or protect Harrison Pharmaceuticals and deny a young woman her best chance at survival. 2 hours later, Brianna was stabilized. The doctor explained she could go home but would need to return for follow-up tests tomorrow. "The seizure is under control," Dr. Patel told Jasmine as they stood outside Brianna's room. "But this confirms what we discussed. Without the new treatment, these episodes will likely become more frequent and severe." "How soon does she need to start?" Jasmine asked. "Ideally within 2 weeks," Dr. Patel replied. "But first, we need to discuss the financial arrangements." Jasmine nodded, her face tight with worry. "I understand. I'll figure something out." Michael had been standing quietly nearby. Now he stepped forward. "I'd still like to help with the costs." "Mr. Harrison," Jasmine began. "Please, let me finish," Michael said. "Not as charity. I have a proposal." Dr. Patel excused herself, leaving them alone in the hallway. "I'm listening," Jasmine said cautiously. "Come back to work for me," Michael said. "Not as a maid, but as Sophie's full-time nurse and developmental specialist. The salary would reflect your qualifications. 3 times what you were making before, plus complete healthcare coverage that would include Brianna as a dependent." Jasmine's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely. Sophie needs you. That much is obvious now. And what about your company? The competing drug? Michael rubbed his forehead. I don't know yet. But one problem at a time. The drive back to Jasmine's apartment was quiet. Brianna had been given medication that made her sleepy, and she dozed in the back seat while Jasmine sat beside her watching her breathing. When they arrived, Michael helped carry Brianna up to the apartment and onto her bed. As Jasmine tucked her sister in, Michael waited in the living room, noticing details he had missed earlier. On a small bookshelf sat a framed photograph that caught his attention. He picked it up and was surprised to see it was a picture of Sophie. In the photo, the baby was smiling, something Michael hadn't seen in weeks. You kept a picture of her, Michael said when Jasmine returned. Jasmine took the frame from him gently. She was my patient, even if you didn't know that. I care about her. Why didn't you tell me you were a nurse when I hired you? Would it have mattered? Jasmine asked. You needed a maid. I needed money for Brianna's treatments. Mrs. Coleman hired me after reading my application. You never even interviewed me. Michael winced at the truth in her words. About my offer. I need to think about it, Jasmine said. This isn't just about a job anymore. There's Brianna's treatment, your company's interests. It's complicated. Take 24 hours, Michael said, heading toward the door. But Sophie needs help now. Whatever you decide about the job, would you at least come see her once, as a medical professional? Jasmine hesitated, then nodded. I can come tomorrow afternoon, after Brianna's follow-up appointment. But just to assess Sophie, not as an employee. Thank you, Michael said, relief evident in his voice. I'll see you tomorrow. The next morning, Michael met with Harrison Pharmaceuticals' legal team in his downtown office. 3 lawyers sat across from him as he explained the situation, carefully omitting Brianna's name and specific details. So, hypothetically, said Patricia Reynolds, the head counsel, you want to hire a specialized pediatric nurse for your daughter and provide health care coverage that includes this nurse's sister, who needs an experimental cancer treatment. Yes, Michael confirmed. And this experimental treatment directly competes with Nexapril, our company's most important drug in development, Patricia continued. That's my understanding. The lawyers exchanged glances. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Harrison, this creates a significant conflict of interest. Nexapril represents a 5-year, $200 million investment by this company. The board won't look kindly on you personally funding a competing treatment. I'm not personally funding it, Michael argued. I'm providing healthcare benefits to an employee and her dependent. A very specific employee with a very specific dependent needing a very specific treatment, said James Wilson, another lawyer. It looks like you're betting against your own company. What if I create a firewall? Michael suggested. I'll recuse myself from all Nexapril decisions. Patricia shook her head. That's not enough. As CEO, your actions represent the company. If word gets out that you're supporting a competing treatment, investors could see it as a vote of no confidence in our own drug. Michael stood up and walked to the window overlooking Los Angeles. What's the point of running a pharmaceutical company if we can't actually help people who need medicine? The point is to help millions of people through successful drug development, which requires billions of dollars in investment, Patricia replied. That system doesn't work if the CEO undermines his own products. Back at the mansion that afternoon, Michael checked on Sophie. Mrs. Coleman had just tried to feed her lunch, with little success. She took 2 spoonfuls and refused the rest, Mrs. Coleman reported, worry evident in her voice. Michael nodded, looking at his daughter's thin face and the angry red rash now covering her neck and cheeks. Ms. Walker is coming to assess her today. Mrs. Coleman's face brightened. That's wonderful news, sir. It's just an assessment, not a job yet, Michael cautioned. And there are complications. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Michael opened it himself to find Jasmine standing there with a professional-looking bag. "Thank you for coming," he said, leading her inside. "Sophie's in the nursery." When they entered, Sophie was fussing in her crib. The moment she saw Jasmine, her cries changed from distressed to excited. She reached out her small arms toward Jasmine. "She remembers you," Michael said, surprised. Jasmine smiled for the first time since he'd seen her at the hospital. "Babies are smarter than we give them credit for." She approached the crib. "Hello, Sophie. I've missed you too." For the next hour, Michael watched as Jasmine evaluated Sophie. She tested the baby's responses to different textures, sounds, and movements, taking notes and explaining everything as she went. "See how she pulls away from this soft fabric but leans into the firmer one? That's typical of sensory processing issues. Her nervous system craves deep pressure but is oversensitive to light touch." She demonstrated various holds and techniques, showing Michael how to apply gentle but firm pressure to Sophie's arms and legs. "This helps reset her nervous system when she's overwhelmed," Jasmine explained. By lunchtime, Jasmine had prepared a simple meal for Sophie, carefully mashing certain foods to a specific consistency and separating items on the plate. "Children with sensory issues often have food aversions based on texture, not taste," she explained. To Michael's amazement, Sophie ate every bite, something she hadn't done in weeks. "You're a miracle worker," he said as Jasmine cleaned Sophie's face afterward. "No, I'm a trained professional who understands her condition," Jasmine corrected him. "Anyone with the right training could do this." "But they're not here. You are." Michael looked at her directly. "Have you considered my offer?" Jasmine nodded slowly. "Yes. If we can work out proper employment terms, written contract, healthcare coverage starting immediately, and a clear understanding that I'm here as a healthcare provider, not household staff, then I'll accept." "Agreed," Michael said quickly. "I'll have the paperwork drawn up immediately." As Jasmine prepared to leave, Sophie began to fuss again, reaching for her. "She doesn't want you to go," Michael observed. "I'll be back tomorrow," Jasmine promised, gently touching Sophie's cheek. "We'll start a proper treatment plan." Just as they reached the front door, Clara, Michael's executive assistant, rushed in looking worried. "Mr. Harrison, I've been trying to reach you for the past hour. The board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. "What about?" Michael asked, though he already suspected the answer. Clara glanced uncomfortably at Jasmine. "It's regarding your personal involvement in an employee's family medical situation. Richard Townsend called the meeting. He says it's a serious conflict of interest that requires immediate attention." Michael's jaw tightened. "I see." "Who is Richard Townsend?" Jasmine asked after Clara excused herself. "Head of Research and Development and my biggest critic on the board," Michael explained. "He's also the lead on the Nexapril project." "The competing drug," Jasmine said, understanding dawning on her face. "So they already know." "It seems that way." Michael ran a hand through his hair. "I need to figure out how to handle this before tomorrow morning." "Maybe this isn't going to work after all," Jasmine said quietly. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your company." "You're not," Michael replied firmly. "I'm the reason. Because for the first time since Diana died, I'm making a decision based on what's right, not what's profitable." As Jasmine left, Michael watched her walk to her car. Tomorrow he would face the board and fight for his right to help Brianna and Sophie. But tonight, he had work to do. He needed a plan that would satisfy both his conscience and his board of directors, if such a plan even existed. Michael worked late into the night, reviewing company files and financial reports. By 7:30 the next morning, he was already in his car driving to Harrison Pharmaceuticals headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock, but he wanted to arrive early to prepare. The sleek glass building towered over the surrounding streets. As Michael entered the lobby, employees nodded respectfully, but he noticed the curious glances. News traveled fast in corporate hallways. In his office, Clara waited with a cup of coffee and a worried expression. "The board members are already gathering in the conference room," she said. "Richard Townsend arrived 30 minutes ago with a stack of documents." Michael took the coffee. "Thank you, Clara. Is everything ready for my presentation?" "Yes, sir. But are you sure this is the approach you want to take? It's quite unconventional." "Sometimes unconventional is necessary," Michael replied, straightening his tie. "Let's go." The boardroom fell silent as Michael entered. 12 people sat around the long table, Richard Townsend directly opposite Michael's chair at the head. Richard was in his 50s with perfectly combed gray hair and a permanent frown. "Good morning," Michael said, taking his seat. "I understand this emergency meeting was called to discuss my personal decisions regarding an employee." Richard didn't waste time. "This goes beyond personal decisions, Michael. We have evidence that you're planning to hire a nurse specifically to provide healthcare benefits for her sister, who needs an experimental treatment that directly competes with Nexapril." He slid folders to each board member. "The treatment in question uses a compound that could make our $200 million investment worthless if it proves more effective." "Is this true, Michael?" asked Janet Foster, one of the longest-serving board members. Michael nodded. "Yes, but there's more to the situation than Richard has presented." "What more could there be?" Richard demanded. "You're the CEO of Harrison Pharmaceuticals, yet you're personally funding a competing treatment. It's a clear conflict of interest. The woman I'm hiring, Jasmine Walker, is a qualified pediatric nurse with specialized training in sensory processing disorders," Michael explained. "My daughter Sophie suffers from this condition. Ms. Walker is the only person who has been able to help her." "We sympathize with your daughter's condition," Richard said, his tone suggesting otherwise, "but this still represents a conflict of interest." Michael stood and walked to the screen at the front of the room. "What if I told you there's an opportunity here that benefits everyone? Clara, please display the presentation." The screen lit up with a new company logo, Harrison Pediatric Care Division. "I'm proposing a new direction for our company," Michael announced. "A division focused specifically on rare pediatric conditions, with Dr. Robert Anderson as medical director." Murmurs spread around the table as Michael continued. "I've spent the past 24 hours researching this market. There are over 400,000 children in the United States with rare medical conditions. Many treatments are underfunded because the market is considered too small for major investment." "This is about one treatment for one person," Richard interrupted. "You're trying to disguise personal interest as business strategy." "No," Michael countered. "I'm recognizing a need I was blind to before. And I've already contacted Biogen Labs, the developers of the treatment Brianna Walker needs. They're interested in a partnership rather than competition." This caused a stir among the board members. "A partnership?" Janet asked. "What kind of partnership?" "Their treatment approach combined with our distribution network and research facilities," Michael explained. "Initial projections show potential revenue of $80 million in the first year, growing to $300 million by year 5. Richard shook his head. "This is emotional decision-making. Since Diana died, you haven't been the same, Michael. Perhaps you should take a leave of absence." "Don't bring my wife into this," Michael said sharply. "This is about business opportunity and doing the right thing simultaneously." The boardroom door opened and everyone turned to see Mrs. Coleman enter, carrying Sophie. Behind her stood Jasmine. "I apologize for the interruption," Mrs. Coleman said, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort at addressing the board. "But I thought the board should see what's at stake." Richard stood angrily. "This is completely inappropriate." "What's inappropriate," Mrs. Coleman replied, "is discussing Sophie's care without seeing her condition." Janet Foster approached Mrs. Coleman and looked at Sophie. The baby's rash was visible, her small body thin from not eating properly. "The poor child," Janet murmured. "She has sensory processing disorder," Jasmine explained. "Without proper treatment, Her development will be severely impacted." Richard wasn't moved. This is emotional manipulation, bringing a baby to a board meeting. "Actually," Janet said, turning to face the room, "it's relevant information. If Michael's daughter has a condition that relates to this new division, we should know about it." Mrs. Coleman stepped forward. "There's something else you should know. I hold 5% of Harrison Pharmaceuticals shares." This caused another wave of surprise. Michael looked at her in shock. "Mr. Harrison Sr. left them to me in his will," Mrs. Coleman explained. "I've never interfered in company business before, but I will vote my shares in favor of Michael's proposal." Richard looked furious. "Even with your shares, Mrs. Coleman, Michael needs board approval for this level of restructuring." While the debate continued, Michael's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Dr. Patel. "Need decision on Brianna Walker's treatment. Must begin protocol within 48 hours for optimal results." Michael looked at Jasmine, who had also received the message. Her face showed the tension she felt. Richard noticed their exchange. "What is it now?" "Brianna needs to start treatment within 48 hours, Michael explained. "We need to make a decision." "The company needs to make a decision," Richard corrected. "And bringing personal emergencies into a board meeting only proves my point about your emotional state." Janet Foster had been quiet, watching the interaction. Now she spoke up. "I'd like to hear more about this pediatric division, Michael. The numbers you projected are significant." "They're fantasy," Richard countered, based on his desperation to help this one case. "Actually," Dr. Anderson said, entering the room, "those projections are conservative. I've reviewed them. The pediatric rare disease market is severely underserved." For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Anderson explained the medical and business potential of Michael's proposal. Several board members asked thoughtful questions. Richard became increasingly agitated. Finally, Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! This is still a conflict of interest. Michael, I'll make this simple. Either end your arrangement with Miss Walker and focus on Nexapril, or I'll call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership." The room fell silent. Jasmine stepped forward. "Mr. Harrison, I appreciate everything you've tried to do, but I can't be the reason you lose your company. I withdraw my application." "No," Michael said firmly. "Richard, you're forcing a false choice. This company was founded to help people through medical innovation. What good is that mission if we ignore people right in front of us who need help?" "It's business, not charity," Richard insisted. Michael's phone buzzed again. Another message from Dr. Patel. "Brianna experiencing fever. Need to start preparation for treatment immediately." Jasmine checked her phone and gasped. "I need to go. Brianna's condition is worsening." "Go," Michael said immediately. "I'll meet you at the hospital." "What about the meeting?" Janet asked. "Sometimes there are more important things than board meetings," Michael replied. "Richard, you want to vote? Fine, call it. But I'm going to help a young woman who needs treatment now." As Michael headed for the door with Jasmine, Mrs. Coleman spoke up. "I'll stay for the vote. I have Michael's proxy and my own shares." In the elevator down to the parking garage, Jasmine looked at Michael with concern. "You might lose everything because of us." "No," Michael replied. "I might gain something more important. Let's get to the hospital." As they drove through the morning traffic toward Cedars-Sinai, Michael's mind was focused on Brianna and her need for immediate treatment. The company he had built, the fortune he had amassed, the power he had wielded, none of it seemed to matter compared to the young woman fighting for her life and the child who needed specialized care. For the first time since Diana died, Michael felt he was making a decision she would have approved of. Whatever happened with the board vote, he knew this was the right path. Michael and Jasmine rushed through the hospital entrance, heading straight to the oncology department where Dr. Patel was waiting. "Brianna's fever has reached 103 degrees, Dr. Patel explained as they hurried down the hallway. "We need to start antibiotics immediately before beginning the treatment protocol. Do whatever is necessary." Michael said without hesitation. They reached Brianna's room, finding her shivering despite the blankets covering her thin frame. Her face was flushed with fever, her eyes glassy. "Jasmine?" she whispered when she saw her sister. Jasmine rushed to her side, taking her hand. "I'm here, Bri. The doctors are going to start the new treatment." "We don't have the money," Brianna said weakly. "Don't worry about that now," Jasmine soothed, brushing hair from Brianna's forehead. Dr. Patel pulled Michael aside. "We need the financial arrangements finalized before we can order the treatment drugs. They're specially formulated for each patient." "I'll take care of it right now," Michael said, stepping into the hallway to make a call. Just as he pulled out his phone, it rang. The caller ID showed Mrs. Coleman. "Mrs. Coleman? How did the vote go?" "It's still ongoing, Mr. Harrison," she replied. "Richard is making a strong case against you. Several board members are wavering. They're asking for you to return and address their concerns." Michael glanced back into Brianna's room, where Jasmine sat holding her sister's hand as nurses prepared an IV. "I can't come back right now," he said firmly. "Brianna needs emergency treatment." "I understand, but Richard is suggesting this proves his point about your emotional decision-making. He's called for an immediate vote of no confidence." Michael closed his eyes briefly. Everything he had built was at stake. "How long do I have?" "They've called a 30-minute recess. The vote will happen at 11:30 exactly." Michael checked his watch. 11 o'clock. "I'll call in. Put me on speaker when they reconvene." After ending the call, Michael approached the nurses' station and wrote a check for $50,000 to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. "This is the deposit for Brianna Walker's experimental treatment," he told the administrator. "Please process it immediately so they can order the medication." The administrator looked surprised at the amount but nodded. "I'll process this right away, Mr. Harrison." Back in Brianna's room, Dr. Patel was explaining the treatment protocol to Jasmine. "Once we get the fever under control, we'll begin the first phase tomorrow morning. The full course is 3 weeks of in-hospital treatment followed by monthly outpatient sessions." "Has the deposit been arranged?" Jasmine asked, looking worried. "It's done," Michael confirmed. "The treatment is approved to start as soon as Brianna's fever breaks." Jasmine looked at him with gratitude that quickly turned to concern. "What about your board meeting?" "They're voting at 11:30, Michael replied. "I'll call in." "You should be there in person," Jasmine insisted. "This is your company we're talking about." Brianna needs support right now. The company will have to manage without me for a few hours." A nurse entered with antibiotics for Brianna's IV. As they waited for the medication to take effect, Michael's phone buzzed with text messages from various board members. Some expressed support, others concern. At 11:25, Michael stepped into a small consultation room and dialed into the board meeting. Mrs. Coleman answered immediately and put him on speaker. "Michael is on the line," she announced to the room. "Michael," Richard's voice came through clearly, "your absence today speaks volumes about your priorities." "My priorities are exactly where they should be," Michael replied calmly. "With a young woman who needs life-saving treatment and a company that has the power to help her and thousands like her." "Emotional decisions have no place in business," Richard countered. "That's why I'm calling for this vote of no confidence." Janet Foster spoke up. "Before we vote, I'd like to hear more about this partnership with Biogen Labs. The potential seems significant." "It is," Michael confirmed. "I've spoken with their CEO this morning. They're prepared to bring their research team and patents to a joint venture with our new pediatric division. The market is there, the science is there, and the need is there." "The need for one patient," Richard scoffed. "No," Michael said firmly. "The need for hundreds of thousands of patients with rare conditions who are ignored by big pharma because their numbers are too small to justify investment. These are real people, not just market segments." The line fell silent for a moment before Janet spoke again. "I've reviewed the financial projections Dr. Anderson provided. They're conservative, but promising. They're fantasies, Richard insisted. Michael is letting his personal situation cloud his judgment. Since his wife died, my wife would have been the first to support this, Michael interrupted. Diana always said the purpose of medicine is to heal people, not just make money. Touching, Richard said sarcastically, but this is a business, not a charity. Michael took a deep breath. Richard, I understand your position. Nexapril has been your project for 5 years. But what if there's a better approach? What if the treatment Brianna needs actually represents the future of cancer therapy? That's a big what if to bet the company on, Richard replied. Sometimes the biggest risks yield the greatest rewards, Michael said. I'm offering you a choice, Richard. Support this new direction or sell your shares to me at a 20% premium. Gasps were audible over the speaker. You're trying to buy me out? Richard asked incredulously. I'm offering you a profitable exit if you can't support the company's new direction. Your shares are worth approximately $40 million. I'll pay $48 million for them. The boardroom erupted in discussion. Through the chaos, Mrs. Coleman's voice emerged. It's time to vote, she announced. All in favor of the vote of no confidence in Michael Harrison as CEO, raise your hands. Michael waited tensely, unable to see what was happening. 5 votes in favor, Mrs. Coleman reported. All opposed? Another pause. 6 votes opposed, including my 5% stake. That's a tie, Richard protested. Michael can't vote on a no-confidence motion against himself. Actually, Janet Foster interjected, the company bylaws allow it. Michael retains his position. The relief Michael felt was short-lived as a nurse rushed into the consultation room. Mr. Harrison, Brianna's having another seizure. Michael ended the call without saying goodbye and ran back to Brianna's room. Doctors and nurses surrounded her bed as her body convulsed. Jasmine stood pressed against the wall, tears streaming down her face. She was just talking to me, Jasmine said, her voice breaking. Then her eyes rolled back. Dr. Patel emerged from the group of medical staff. The seizure is more severe than the previous ones. We need to start the experimental treatment immediately, not tomorrow as planned. But the medication hasn't been delivered yet, Jasmine said. I've called Biogen Labs directly, Dr. Patel explained. They're sending an emergency dose by courier. It should arrive within the hour. Michael put his arm around Jasmine's shoulders. She'll get through this. The treatment is coming. As they waited anxiously, Michael's phone rang again. It was Clara from his office. Mr. Harrison, Richard Townsend just announced his resignation. He's accepting your offer to buy his shares. Fine, Michael said distractedly. Have legal draw up the paperwork. There's more, Clara continued. He's already meeting with representatives from Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Our security team believes he's planning to share information about Nexapril with them. This caught Michael's full attention. That would violate his non-disclosure agreement. Get legal on this immediately. After ending the call, Michael turned to find Jasmine looking at him with concern. More problems at the company? She asked. Nothing that can't be handled, Michael assured her. Right now, Brianna is the priority. A hospital staff member entered the room. Miss Walker? The courier from Biogen Labs is here with the medication. Relief washed over Jasmine's face. Thank God. Dr. Patel returned with a medical team to begin the treatment. As they prepared Brianna, Michael received another call, this time from Janet Foster. Michael, the board has voted to approve the pediatric division but with conditions. We want proof it can be profitable within 1 year. That's fair, Michael agreed. I'll make it happen. And Michael, Janet added, Richard is already causing problems. He's meeting with competitors. We may need you back here soon to handle the situation. I understand, Michael said. I'll be there as soon as Brianna is stable. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical activity. By evening, Brianna's seizures had stopped and her fever had dropped to 100 degrees. The first dose of the experimental treatment was being administered through her IV. Jasmine hadn't left her sister's side. Michael had arranged for food to be delivered and set up a small work area in the corner of the hospital room, running his company remotely while keeping Jasmine company. Dr. Anderson arrived around 7 o'clock that evening with Sophie and Mrs. Coleman. "How is she doing?" he asked, looking at Brianna's monitors. "Better," Jasmine said, the exhaustion evident in her voice. "The first dose seems to be helping already." Sophie reached for Jasmine the moment she saw her. Mrs. Coleman handed the baby to her, and Sophie immediately settled against Jasmine's chest. "She missed you," Mrs. Coleman said. "Nothing would calm her down until we said we were coming to see you." Michael watched as Jasmine held Sophie with one arm while keeping her other hand on Brianna's. In that moment, he realized they had somehow become connected, all of them, through circumstances none of them could have predicted. "We should set up a schedule," Michael suggested. "You need to care for both Sophie and Brianna, and I need to handle the company situation." Jasmine nodded. "We'll make it work." As Michael looked at the makeshift family gathered in the hospital room, he knew there would be challenges ahead. Richard's betrayal, the board's conditions, Brianna's treatment, Sophie's ongoing care, all would require attention and resources. But for the first time since Diana died, Michael felt he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he needed to do. Over the next few days, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center became their second home. Michael had a small desk brought into Brianna's private room, setting up a temporary office in the corner. Multiple laptops, tablets, and phones covered the surface as he ran Harrison Pharmaceuticals remotely. Brianna's treatment continued around the clock. The experimental medication flowed through her IV tubes while machines beeped steadily, monitoring her vital signs. Jasmine spent most days at her sister's side, only leaving when Mrs. Coleman brought Sophie for visits. "You've turned my hospital room into an office," Brianna commented on the third morning. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were clearer than they had been in days. Michael looked up from his laptop. "I hope it doesn't bother you. I need to stay on top of some company issues." "It's nice having people around," Brianna said. "Usually when I'm in the hospital, it's just Jasmine and me." Jasmine entered with coffee cups for herself and Michael. The cafeteria finally got a decent coffee machine. "Thank you," Michael said, taking the cup. His phone rang immediately. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He stepped into the hallway, pacing as he spoke in a low, intense voice. Jasmine sat beside Brianna's bed. "He never stops working," Brianna observed. "He's fighting to save his company and help us at the same time," Jasmine replied. "I don't know how he manages it all." At noon, Mrs. Coleman arrived with Sophie. The baby squealed with delight when she saw Jasmine, reaching for her with eager hands. "Someone missed you," Mrs. Coleman said, handing Sophie to Jasmine. Brianna smiled weakly. "Bring her here. I want to see the famous Sophie." Jasmine carefully placed Sophie on the edge of Brianna's bed. "Sophie, this is my sister Brianna." Sophie studied Brianna with curious eyes before reaching out to touch her face gently. "She likes you," Jasmine said, surprised. "Kids always like me," Brianna replied, "even when I have no hair." Michael returned from his call, looking stressed but smiling when he saw Sophie with Brianna. "That's a sight I never expected to see," he said. Dr. Patel entered with a team of medical students following behind her. "Good afternoon, everyone. I need to examine Brianna." Mrs. Coleman took Sophie. "We'll wait outside." After the examination, Dr. Patel had positive news. "The inflammation markers in your blood are already decreasing." "That's a very good sign. The treatment appears to be working." "Really?" Jasmine asked, hope filling her voice. "It's early, but yes, the initial response is encouraging," Dr. Patel confirmed. "We'll continue monitoring closely." Once the medical team left, Michael received another urgent call. This time his expression darkened as he listened. "When did this happen?" he asked sharply. "Get the legal team on it immediately." He ended the call and turned to Jasmine with a grim expression. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Richard Townsend met with 3 of our competitors yesterday. Our sources confirm he shared details about Nexapril's formula and our marketing strategy." "Isn't that illegal?" Jasmine asked. "Very. But the damage is already done. Meridian Pharmaceuticals has announced they're fast-tracking a similar drug." "What does that mean for Harrison Pharmaceuticals?" Michael sighed heavily. "It means we're now in a race. If they get their version to market first, our sales projections for Nexapril will be cut in half." "What about the pediatric division?" Jasmine asked. "The board still supports it, but with competitors now targeting our main revenue source, the pressure to show profits quickly has increased." Their conversation was interrupted when Sophie began to cry. Jasmine immediately took her from Mrs. Coleman, holding her in the specific way she had developed for Sophie's sensory needs. The baby calmed almost instantly. "You're amazing with her," Michael observed. "It's not magic," Jasmine explained. "It's understanding her needs. She gets overwhelmed easily, especially in new environments like this hospital room." By evening, Michael had taken so many calls that a nurse finally asked him to limit his phone use. He agreed reluctantly, forwarding urgent matters to Janet Foster to handle temporarily. As night fell, Mrs. Coleman took Sophie home while Michael and Jasmine remained with Brianna. The hospital provided a cot for one of them to sleep on. "You should go home and rest," Jasmine told Michael. "You've been here for 3 days straight." "So have you," he pointed out. "Yes, but Brianna is my sister." Michael looked at Brianna's sleeping form. "I need to see this through. I've spent my entire career focused on profit margins and market share. This is the first time I've actually seen the direct impact of medical treatment on a real person." Around midnight, Brianna's monitors began beeping rapidly. Her oxygen levels had dropped and she was struggling to breathe. Jasmine immediately pressed the call button while Michael ran to the door to shout for help. The medical team rushed in, working quickly to stabilize Brianna. Jasmine and Michael were ushered out into the hallway. "This can happen with this treatment," a nurse explained. "The medication sometimes causes inflammation before it starts healing. We're giving her oxygen and steroids to help." Jasmine sank into a chair, her face pale with worry. Michael sat beside her, not knowing what to say. After 30 minutes of tense waiting, Dr. Patel emerged from Brianna's room. "She's stable again," she assured them. "This reaction isn't uncommon. We'll adjust her medication dosage." "Can we see her?" Jasmine asked. "In a little while. She needs rest now." Left alone in the hallway, Michael and Jasmine sat in silence for several minutes. "I need some air," Jasmine finally said, standing up. "I'll come with you," Michael offered. They wandered the quiet hospital corridors until they found themselves at the entrance to the small hospital chapel. It was empty at this late hour, lit only by a few soft lights. Jasmine entered and sat in a back pew. Michael hesitated before joining her. "I haven't been in a chapel since Diana's funeral," he admitted. "I come to hospital chapels a lot," Jasmine said. "Something about them helps me think clearly." Tears suddenly filled her eyes. "I'm so tired of being strong all the time." Michael sat quietly, letting her cry. "After our parents died," Jasmine continued, wiping her eyes, "I had to become an adult overnight. I was 19, in nursing school, and suddenly responsible for a 13-year-old. Then when Brianna got sick 2 years ago—" "You've carried too much alone," Michael said gently. Jasmine nodded. "What about you?" "You lost Diana and became a single father on the same day." Michael stared at his hands. "I didn't handle it well. I buried myself in work and left Sophie with nannies and staff. I couldn't bear to look at her because she reminded me of Diana." "That's why you reacted so strongly when you saw me with Sophie in the carrier," Jasmine realized. "Yes, it wasn't about you or your methods. It was seeing Sophie happy with someone else when I couldn't connect with her myself." "She needs you," Jasmine said. Children need their parents. I don't know how to be what she needs, Michael admitted. Diana would have known exactly what to do. No one knows exactly what to do, Jasmine said. We all just try our best. They sat in comfortable silence for a while before returning to check on Brianna. She was sleeping peacefully now, her oxygen levels back to normal. The next morning brought unexpected good news. Dr. Rowe. Patel arrived early with Brianna's latest test results. The cancer cells are showing a significant decrease in activity, she announced. It's a stronger response than we typically see this early in treatment. What does that mean? Brianna asked, her voice stronger than it had been in days. It means the treatment is working very well for you, Dr. Patel explained. If this trend continues, we might see remission sooner than expected. Jasmine hugged her sister carefully, mindful of the IV lines. That's wonderful news! Even Michael found himself smiling with genuine relief. His phone buzzed with messages, but for once he ignored them, focusing instead on the joy in Brianna and Jasmine's faces. Later that morning, Dr. Anderson arrived to check on everyone. I've been working on the plans for the pediatric division, he told Michael. I've identified 5 key treatments we should focus on initially, including a modified version of Brianna's therapy for younger patients. Good, Michael said. We need to move quickly. I've just learned 3 competitors are now developing drugs similar to Nexapril. Richard's doing? Dr. Anderson asked. Michael nodded grimly. He's determined to undermine us. As they discussed business, Jasmine worked with Sophie on some sensory integration exercises she had developed. Brianna watched with interest from her bed. You're really good at this, Brianna told her sister. You should be running a clinic, not working for someone else. Jasmine smiled. Maybe someday. Right now, I'm just happy you're responding to treatment. Michael overheard the exchange and paused his conversation with Dr. Anderson. Watching Jasmine with Sophie, seeing her expertise and natural abilities, gave him an idea that might solve multiple problems at once. But before he could share his thoughts, his phone rang again. Janet Foster's name flashed on the screen. I need to take this, he said, stepping out into the hallway. The news from Janet was concerning. Investor confidence was wavering with the news of competitors developing similar drugs to Nexapril. The board was nervous about the financial outlook for the next quarter. As Michael paced the hospital corridor, trying to reassure Janet and develop a strategy, he realized the path forward would require bold action and a complete rethinking of Harrison Pharmaceuticals' future. 6 months passed, bringing changes that transformed both the Harrison mansion and the lives of those within it. The cold, formal residence that had once echoed with Sophie's desperate cries now rang with her laughter. The day of her first birthday arrived on a perfect spring morning in Los Angeles. The guests will be here at 2 o'clock, Mrs. Coleman said, directing the staff as they arranged flowers and balloons in the garden. Dr. Anderson confirmed he's bringing the team from the hospital. Michael nodded, watching workers set up small tables on the lawn. Is the presentation ready for the announcement? Yes, sir. The screen is being set up near the pool. In the specialized nursery that now occupied what had once been a rarely used sitting room, Jasmine helped Sophie into a pretty blue dress for her party. The room featured equipment specifically designed for sensory integration therapy, textured mats, special lighting, and custom-built play areas. Look at you, birthday girl, Jasmine said, smiling as Sophie babbled happily in response. 1 year old today. Brianna entered the room carrying a small wrapped gift. Her hair had grown back in short curls, and her face had regained its healthy color. She wore jeans and a UCLA t-shirt. Is the birthday princess ready for her big day? Brianna asked, setting the gift on a shelf. I have to leave for class in 20 minutes, but I'll be back for the party. You could skip class today, Jasmine suggested. Brianna shook her head. Professor Martinez gives pop quizzes every Friday. I need the credits if I'm going to finish my pre-med requirements on time. Pre-med, Jasmine repeated with pride. I still can't believe my little sister is studying to become a doctor. Cancer changes your perspective, Brianna said simply. I want to help kids like me. The doorbell rang downstairs. Mrs. Coleman's voice floated up. Dr. Anderson is here early, Mr. Harrison. Michael met Dr. Anderson in his home office, where charts and presentation materials were spread across the desk. The latest numbers from the pediatric division, Dr. Anderson said, handing Michael a folder. Profits are modest but growing, exactly as projected. Michael reviewed the figures with satisfaction. 5 new partnerships with community hospitals in 6 months. Not bad. Los Angeles General is particularly pleased with the funding for their pediatric wing, Dr. Anderson added. The staff there still can't believe Jasmine used to work for them before becoming our head consultant. Speaking of Jasmine, Michael said, has she seen the surprise yet? No, we've kept it quiet as requested. Dr. Anderson smiled. She'll be shocked. By 2 o'clock, the garden filled with guests. Hospital staff from Cedars-Sinai mingled with executives from Harrison Pharmaceuticals. Children from the hospital's pediatric ward played on the lawn under supervision, invited to share in Sophie's special day. Jasmine brought Sophie outside, the baby looking around with wide eyes at all the activity. Unlike 6 months ago, she showed no signs of distress at the noise and movement. Instead, she reached toward the colorful decorations with interest. She's like a different child, Janet Foster commented, approaching Michael with a glass of lemonade. The board members who opposed you are eating their words now. The pediatric division's success helps, Michael acknowledged. Partnering with Biogen Labs instead of competing with them doubled our research capacity. And Richard? Janet asked. Still fighting the lawsuit for sharing trade secrets, Michael replied. But the damage was minimal in the end. Our new direction made his betrayal almost irrelevant. The party continued with cake, presents, and children's games. Sophie remained calm and engaged throughout, a testament to the therapy techniques Jasmine had implemented over the months. As afternoon turned to early evening, Michael called for everyone's attention. He stood next to a large screen set up on the patio. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Sophie's first birthday, he began. A year ago, I was lost. My daughter was suffering. My company was focused solely on profit, and I had forgotten what truly matters. He gestured toward Jasmine, who stood holding Sophie. Then I met someone who changed everything, not just for Sophie, but for me and for Harrison Pharmaceuticals. The screen behind him lit up with the logo for Harrison Pediatric Care Initiative. Today, I'm proud to announce the expansion of our pediatric division into a full foundation that will partner with 25 more hospitals across the country. This initiative will provide funding for rare childhood conditions and specialized training for pediatric healthcare workers. Applause broke out among the guests. Michael continued, "But that's not all. Dr. Anderson will head the medical team, and I'm pleased to announce that Jasmine Walker has agreed to lead the training division, developing programs to help healthcare workers identify and treat sensory processing disorders." Jasmine's mouth fell open in surprise. Brianna, who had returned from class, squeezed her sister's arm excitedly. "We'll be breaking ground next month on a specialized treatment center right here in Los Angeles," Michael added. "And the first wing will be named after someone who taught me that every child deserves care designed specifically for their needs. The Diana Harrison Sensory Integration Center." Tears filled Jasmine's eyes as the screen showed architectural plans for the new facility. Michael stepped down from the podium to join her and Sophie. "You planned all this without telling me?" Jasmine asked quietly. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Michael replied. "You'll have full control over the training programs. It's what you were meant to do." As the sun began to set, most guests departed. Only the closest people remained: Dr. Anderson, Mrs. Coleman, Brianna, Jasmine, Michael, and Sophie. They gathered on the patio, watching the sky turn pink over Los Angeles. Mrs. Coleman approached with a special gift she had kept hidden until now. "I've been working on this for months," she said, handing Michael a leather-bound book. Inside were photographs, Diana holding baby Sophie in the hospital, followed by carefully arranged pictures documenting Sophie's first year. The early pages showed a fussy, unhappy baby. Then came photos with Jasmine showing Sophie's gradual transformation into the happy, thriving child she was today. Mrs. Harrison would be so proud of her daughter, Mrs. Coleman said softly. And of you, Mr. Harrison. Michael touched the photos of Diana gently. I wish she could have seen Sophie now. Put Sophie down for a moment, Brianna suggested to Jasmine. I want to see if she'll do it again. Jasmine set Sophie on her feet, keeping her balanced with gentle hands. Then she moved a few steps away and knelt down, arms outstretched. Come on, Sophie, she encouraged. You can do it. Sophie wobbled on her small legs, her face determined. Then, to everyone's delight, she took one step forward, followed by another and another, walking unassisted for the first time directly into Jasmine's waiting arms. She did it! Brianna exclaimed, clapping her hands. Michael watched, his throat tight with emotion. 6 months ago, doctors had worried Sophie's development might be permanently affected by her sensory issues. Now she was walking, babbling, and thriving beyond all expectations. Later, after Sophie had been put to bed and Brianna had returned to her campus apartment, Michael and Jasmine sat on the patio with cups of tea. Did you ever imagine this outcome when I fired you that day? Michael asked. Jasmine smiled. Never. I thought I'd lost the best-paying job I'd ever have. I was terrified for Brianna's future. And now she's in remission, studying pre-med. And I'm developing training programs instead of scrubbing floors, Jasmine added. Life takes unexpected turns. Sophie has something I never thought she would, Michael said, looking toward the nursery window. A family that extends beyond blood. People who love her for exactly who she is. Speaking of family, Jasmine said hesitantly, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. What is it? I've been living in the guest wing for 6 months now. Brianna's at college most of the time. With the new position at the foundation, I was thinking maybe it's time I found my own place. Michael was quiet for a long moment. What if I don't want you to go? What do you mean? I mean, Michael said carefully, that Sophie isn't the only one who's grown attached to having you here. I have too. Jasmine looked at him with surprise. Michael, I'm not saying this right, he admitted. I've never been good with personal conversations. But these past 6 months have taught me that wealth and success mean nothing without people to share it with. You've become important to me, Jasmine. To both of us. Jasmine reached across the table and took his hand. You've become important to me, too. As stars appeared in the sky above the mansion, Michael reflected on how completely his life had changed in less than a year. The man who had once fired a maid for using a baby carrier now headed a company dedicated to helping children with special needs. The father who couldn't connect with his daughter now cherished every moment with her. What are you thinking about? Jasmine asked. About how sometimes the things we think we want aren't what we need, Michael replied, and how sometimes the people we least expect change our lives in ways we never imagined possible. Sophie's soft breathing could be heard through the baby monitor on the table, peaceful and content. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.